Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a world where beauty standards were, well, let's just say they were creative. You arrive in a medieval village at sunrise. The sky is pale lavender, the air smells like dew and smoke, and your modern skincare routine has already failed. Here, beauty is a slippery thing, tangled in status, superstition, and the quiet desperation of surviving winter with all your teeth. You pass a small mirror in a market stall and catch your reflection. Healthy glow, too tan. Rounded cheeks, too well fed. Full lips, a bit suspicious, honestly. The local standard, pale as parchment. Cheeks flushed like you've just escaped a fainting couch. And bones, visible ones. Especially your collarbones. Bonus points if you look like a recently reanimated saint. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, post your location and local time down in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk through the square. Villagers mill around in layers of linen, wool, and opinions. A noblewoman passes by on horseback, her skin so pale she could vanish against fresh snow. You overhear someone say she drinks vinegar to maintain that glow. You smile politely and make a mental note never to accept soup from her. Historians still argue whether pale skin was universally revered across all regions in medieval Europe. But in most cases, it was linked to class. Pale meant indoors. Indoors meant wealth. If your face wasn't sunburned, freckled, or weather-beaten, it suggested you had servants to do your sweating for you. You glance around and quickly realize you're already failing. You have a healthy flush, a suspicious tan, and the general glow of someone who's eaten fruit recently. The local blacksmith eyes you like you might be a wood sprite, or worse, a working-class imposter. A group of women nearby are gossiping about another villager's appearance. She's looking too robust, one says, as if it's an insult. Another mutters something about her hands being too strong. Apparently, visible muscle tone means you've been lifting buckets instead of poetry. You're ushered toward a wooden bench near a beauty vendor, though the term vendor is generous. It's a woman with a basket of clays, powders, and a suspicious paste labeled Milk of the Blessed Lamb. You're told to rub it on your face to enhance purity. It smells like sour cheese. One of the women applies rouge, made from crushed berries and a little brick dust. Her cheeks glow like she's just sprinted up a hill while thinking about sin. It's a good look, apparently. Flushed cheeks meant vitality. Or a fever. Either worked. A local friar stops to scold a teenage girl for painting her lips too red. Temptation lives in color, he mutters. She rolls her eyes and applies another coat. Bold move. You try to ask someone where to find soap. They laugh. Oh, you wash your face, one woman says, as if you just admitted to eating pebbles. How modern. Medieval beauty wasn't about hygiene. Not really. It was about illusion. The glow of health without the burden of exertion. The appearance of fragility without actually fainting in the mud. You pass a mirror again. Your reflection looks too real, too healthy, not enough death wish chic. And then you notice something else, your clothes. They're clean, yes, but not fitted right. You're not layered in the prescribed ratio of tight to loose to tight again. You look like someone who dresses for comfort. The horror. Suddenly, a woman nearby faints, just drops, elegantly, into the arms of a shepherd. She's so delicate, someone whispers with admiration. You inch closer. Turns out she skipped breakfast and wore a corset made of hemp rope. you want to call an ambulance. Instead, someone fans her with a sprig of rosemary and offers her a spoonful of goose fat. She's fine, probably. You realize that beauty here is endurance in disguise. A slow, calculated tightrope walk between status and starvation, between holiness and vanity, between blushing and literally passing out. You find a quiet spot near the church wall and sit down. Someone's carved initials into the stone next to you, along with a tiny, crooked heart. You wonder what medieval lovers whispered to each other. Your bones are prominent and your cheek flush is divine. Maybe. You lean back, close your eyes, and take a deep breath. The air smells like wood smoke, rosemary, and a little bit of boiled onion. It's not beautiful, but it's honest. And in this world of powdered noses, painted cheeks, and fainting spells, that might be the rarest beauty of all. You don't get very far before someone comments on your forehead. It's not that there's something wrong with it, exactly. It's just not large enough, not in the fashionable sense. In medieval beauty, a tall, smooth, rounded forehead is chef's kiss. The higher, the better. And yours, tragically modern. Far too compact. Practically peasant. You're led toward a group of noblewomen sitting beneath a canopy, embroidering and talking about politics, lice and poetry, often all at once. They peer at you like you're an unusually shaped turnip. One of them gestures toward your hairline and says, without irony, "We can fix that." You sit. A wooden stool is produced, a small bowl of rosewater, a blade that looks like it was stolen from a carrot peeler. Before you can protest, someone's rubbing your scalp and whispering, "Think lofty thoughts." They begin plucking, painfully, one hair at a time. Apparently, the ideal is to have a forehead that goes on for miles. A wide expanse of blank, noble skin, unblemished by pesky hair, or, heaven forbid, eyebrows. Plucked hairlines, in some regions, started just above the arch of the skull. You've entered the five-head Olympics, and you're a rookie. Historians still argue whether these fashion extremes were driven by noble court influence or simply the world's most persistent case of peer pressure. Either way, your scalp is on fire. A woman beside you mentions she sometimes rubs vinegar and crushed eggshells onto her forehead to bleach the skin lighter. You nod like this is normal. She continues, "If the vinegar burns, that means it's working." You nod harder. There's talk of sugaring, a method for removing facial fuzz involving a mixture of honey, lemon, and finely ground sand. You ask if it works. Sometimes someone shrugs. Other times, it just attracts ants. Eyebrows, once considered bold and expressive, have been erased from fashion. Some women draw them back on higher up the forehead, often as pencil-thin arches that make everyone look faintly surprised or chronically concerned. You glance around. It's like a forest of startled saints. You catch a glimpse of yourself in a polished metal plate. Your hairline now starts somewhere in the middle of your skull. Your forehead glows, partly from oil, partly from emotional damage. You look like an owl with boundary issues. "Now you look refined," someone says approvingly. You're handed a hood to wear, tightly fitted and designed to frame your new forehead masterpiece. It's itchy. You look like an egg that studied Latin. It's worth noting that not all regions embraced this look. In parts of Italy and Spain, natural curls and more relaxed grooming were admired. But you're not in Italy or Spain. You're in a village where beauty is pain, and every noblewoman is part amateur dermatologist, part medieval aesthetician. You try to make conversation. "Do you ever miss your hairline?" you ask. One woman sighs and looks wistfully toward the horizon. "Sometimes. But then I remember, God can see my forehead more clearly now." You're not sure that's theology, but it's a vibe. A passing monk stares at the group, mutters something about vanity, and continues on. You half expect him to denounce you as a witch, but instead he just trips over a goat and yells something deeply unholy. Later, you try to style your remaining hair. You're handed pins, ribbons, and a small iron rod heated over a candle. It's medieval hairstyling, part fashion, part fire hazard. Someone suggests wrapping your locks in parchment overnight to create soft waves. You ask what happens if your hair catches fire. She shrugs. Pray faster. Hair dye is available too, sort of. A popular medieval blend includes leeks, wood ash, and stale wine. The result? A vague auburn, a strange smell, and possible scalp rash. You pass. You overhear two women comparing foreheads. I can fit 3 fingers on mine, one says proudly. 4, says another. A third, not to be outdone, pulls off her hood entirely. The crowd gasps. 5.5, someone whispers. There is applause. You leave the gathering a changed person. Not better. Just changed. With a head that feels lighter, a soul slightly heavier, and an intense longing for modern shampoo. The wind catches your hood as you walk away, and you instinctively reach up to tug it down. The wind exposes your newly plucked forehead to the sun. A child nearby gasps and runs to get his mother. You continue walking, unsure whether you're a beauty icon now or just haunted looking. Either way, people nod at you more respectfully. Apparently, you've made it. Welcome to the highbrow life. You think you've made it through the worst of medieval beauty prep. Then someone offers you a clove. For your mouth. You'll want to chew this, she says kindly. Your breath is earthy. You smile. She winces. In the Middle Ages, a charming smile wasn't just about teeth. It was about breath, spacing, and whether or not your enamel was visibly fleeing the scene. You take the clove, start chewing, and try not to gag. It tastes like spicy wood and broken dreams, but it does make your breath smell better, at least to people who enjoy clove-scented candle wax. You pass a barrel maker who smiles as you greet him. He has exactly 3 teeth, all in different shades of yellow. Somehow, he's still considered rather handsome for a working man. Good teeth, someone remarks approvingly. You begin to understand the curve of expectations here. Historians still argue whether dental hygiene was actually worse than we imagine or just different. Toothbrushes weren't widely used, but toothpicks, chew sticks, and herbal rinses existed. Unfortunately, so did sugar, eventually. And decay wasn't shy about moving in. You wander into a small apothecary stall where a bored-looking woman is grinding sage leaves with a mortar and pestle. For your gums, she says, handing you a pouch of grayish powder. Also keeps away spirits. You ask if it works, on the teeth or the spirits. You don't ask further. Next, you're shown how to make a medieval mouthwash. Boil wine with herbs, then swish and spit. It burns like betrayal, but it does leave your mouth feeling slightly less like a compost heap. The merchant tells you that parsley is also good. So is mint. But cloves are the real MVP, if you can handle the intensity. As for the teeth themselves, beauty standards vary. In some places, white teeth were admired. In others, a dark or even blackened smile was considered exotic, especially if enhanced with soot or crushed bark. You nod as if this makes sense. Deep down, your modern dental plan is weeping. You try to smile at a noblewoman passing by. She tilts her head. Your teeth are very even, she says cautiously, like that might be a red flag. Do you file them? You absolutely do not, but now you wonder if you should. Turns out, some people did file their teeth into shapes, points, notches, decorative grooves. Usually for cultural or religious reasons, or to scare enemies. You smile again. She steps away. Success? A teenage boy nearby uses a frayed stick to scrub his molars, then rinses with beer. It keeps the rot away, he insists. You watch, horrified but fascinated, as he follows it up with a bite of salted pork. You consider doing the same just to blend in. You decline. Breath, though, is more important than teeth. Many medieval folks chewed herbs all day long, fennel seeds, anise, rosemary twigs. Anything to mask the smell of a diet heavy in onions, dried fish, and regret. You chew a sprig of rosemary. It tastes like church and laundry soap. And what about lips? Well, painting them red is a gamble. Too much, and you're tempting Satan. Too little, and you're clearly not trying. A gentle rose tint is ideal, achieved through crushed petals, beet juice, or sometimes sheep blood. You decide to skip the tint and just purse your lips a little dramatically instead. As the day continues, you become aware of your breath in a way you never have before. You cup your hand and exhale. A passing child says, "Don't worry, mine's worse." You feel better. Somehow. Later, you're offered a small cake made of ash, honey, and herbs. For cleansing the tongue, someone says. You nibble it. It's oddly sweet, gritty, and vaguely medicinal. You wonder if it's also supposed to cure heartbreak. It feels like it might. By nightfall, your mouth tastes of cloves, smoke, and a hint of sage. Your teeth are sore from chewing wood. Your breath has cycled through 6 different personalities. You feel like a human potpourri. And yet, in the candlelight, someone leans over and says, "You smell fresh." You've never been more flattered. Beauty here isn't about perfection. It's about effort. About signaling that you care enough to chew bitter herbs and paint your cheeks with fruit paste. It's a kind of performance, really, less about looking good and more about appearing spiritually, socially, and hygienically present. You smile again, tentatively. No one flinches. Progress. You wake the next morning with a clove stuck between your molars and a firm resolve to finally understand how anyone in this village manages to smell vaguely pleasant, despite the fact that no one here seems to own a bar of soap. You shuffle into the marketplace and are nearly bowled over by the scent of rosemary, rose petals, and something distinctly animal. You follow your nose toward a tiny wooden booth festooned with little jars, bottles, and bundles of dried plants tied with twine. The vendor greets you with a grin and an offer. Need something to impress at the feast, or maybe just ward off the dog stench? You nod politely. Both seem relevant. This is the local perfumer, which, in medieval terms, means someone who mixes herbs, oils, animal fats, and hope into beauty products. She pulls out a small vial filled with golden liquid. "Rosewater," she says proudly. "For the face, the wrists, and sometimes the turnips." You take a sniff. It's floral, clean, and, thankfully, nothing like the bucket water you splashed on your face yesterday. Rosewater was a staple among medieval cosmetics, used by everyone from queens to merchant wives. It was believed to purify, tone, and sometimes cure things like melancholy and excessive redness, though whether it ever actually worked is still debated by historians. But the scent alone was half the point. If you smelled like roses, it meant you had time to care. And time, in medieval life, was luxury. You test a bit on your wrist. For once, you smell like something that hasn't been boiled. Then she offers you a paste in a small ceramic jar. "Made from goose fat and crushed lavender," she says proudly. "Keeps your skin soft and your suitor's interested. You dip a finger in. It's greasy. Like, very greasy. You're told to rub it on your cheeks. You do, and now you look and feel like a freshly basted roast chicken. But your skin? Glistening, supple, potentially flammable. Next comes the face powder, made of ground alabaster chalk and, in some horrifying cases, lead. You're told it gives a porcelain finish, like the Virgin herself. You pretend not to hear the word lead. You also pretend not to feel the slow tingling where it touches your pores. "Try this," she says, handing you a soft pouch filled with dried herbs. Sew it into your clothing. It releases fragrance all day. You hold it to your nose. Lavender, thyme, mint, and something bitter. A personal perfume pouch, or sachet, used to disguise the ever-present smells of sweat, livestock, and open drains. You buy 3. Historians still argue whether medieval people were as dirty as we imagine, or if they simply had different thresholds for what counted as clean. But there's little doubt that scent was a big deal. If you couldn't bathe often, you masked it. With smoke, with herbs, with anything that wasn't, well, you. You pass by a noblewoman brushing her hair with a bone comb. Her maid powders her underarms with a mixture of crushed violet petals and powdered bark. Her shoes are stuffed with herbs to keep them fresh. You nod approvingly, then realize your own shoes still smell like the communal latrine from day 3. A nearby monk disapproves. He says perfume is vanity. He says true beauty is spiritual. He says this while clearly enjoying the scent of your rosewater wrist. Hypocrisy smells like mint and guilt. Later, you visit a farmwife who swears by her own mixture of vinegar and herbs, apple cider and rosemary, for everything from hair rinse to foot soak. She gives you a sample in a sheep bladder bottle. You try not to make eye contact with it. You hear whispers of more exotic ingredients. Musk from civet cats, ambergris from whales, even pine resin collected from ancient trees and worn in tiny wax balls around the neck. The perfumes of the elite could be both lovely and horrifying, depending on the animal involved. A nobleman tells you he once paid for a saffron bath. You ask what that is. He says, expensive. That's the whole explanation. By the end of the day, your skin is slippery with animal fats, your hair smells like a herb garden, and your sleeves jingle faintly from the perfume sachets sewn into the seams. You no longer stink of desperation. You now stink of someone trying very hard not to stink. Someone walks by and sniffs the air. "Is that lavender?" they ask. You nod. They smile. You've made it. For now. Just when you're starting to feel confident, glowing with goose fat, breathing clove air, walking around with a forehead the size of a dinner plate, it hits you. Not a person. A smell. A wall of it. Like boiled cabbage left in the sun, mingled with damp wool, and just a hint of mystery barnyard. You've stumbled too close to a noble procession, and the scent wafting off the silk and velvet parade is memorable. Turns out, in the Middle Ages, bathing wasn't always part of the beauty equation, especially for the wealthy. In fact, it was sometimes considered downright dangerous. Washing too often was thought to open the pores and let disease sneak in. And if you were rich, you could afford to mask the stink instead of removing it. You glance around. These nobles, drenched in perfumes, decked in furs, their faces powdered into ghostly perfection. But under it all, they haven't touched soap in weeks. Maybe months. One man rides by in a hat the size of a birdbath. His cloak is ermine, his gloves embroidered, and his aura ripe. You take an instinctive step back. Historians still argue whether medieval nobles truly avoided washing or simply washed differently, dry rubbing with cloths, or wiping down with scented oils instead of water. But whatever the case, bathing wasn't the glamorous tub of rose petals scene you see in movies. It was often a social event, a luxury, or something to be actively avoided if illness was around. You're ushered toward the manor house, trailing behind the perfumed procession. Inside, everything is dimly lit by candles. Thick tapestries cover the walls, less for beauty, more to hold in what little warmth exists. A lady of the house reclines on a cushioned bench, her skin glowing with something that's definitely not sweat. You ask about her skincare. Rubbing cloths, she says, and wine. You nod like that makes sense. A maid shows you a wooden tub in the corner of the room. It's filled with cloudy water and flower petals. That's the last bath water, she explains. We reuse it through the week. You stare into it, you see your future. And it smells like regret. If you were to bathe here, it would involve a sequence, warming water in heavy pots over the fire, mixing in herbs, if available, scrubbing with rough linen, and trying not to spill everything before you even get in. For nobles, this was done by servants. For peasants, maybe twice a year, if you were lucky. And bored, you're handed a fresh tunic, fine linen, embroidered at the cuffs. It smells faintly of juniper, and faintly of something else you'd rather not name. You ask when it was last washed. The maid shrugs. It's been blessed. You decide not to press. Fashion, you learn, was often meant to distract from scent. Cloaks layered with perfumed sachets. Gloves powdered with cinnamon. Necklines dusted with iris root. Smelling good was the illusion. Cleanliness? Optional. You sit at the banquet table, surrounded by noble guests with glowing faces and stifled odors. You notice something strange. No one removes their outer layers. The clothes are part armor, part aroma buffer. You eat with them. Bread, cheese, wine, more wine. Someone drops a piece of meat. A dog retrieves it. No one blinks. Across from you, a man leans forward and whispers, "You smell very modern." You thank him. You think. You retire to your sleeping area, a curtained-off alcove with feather-stuffed pillows and a blanket that probably knew the previous owner intimately. You lie down and reflect. Beauty here is layered, literally. You can paint your face, scent your sleeves, pluck your hairline, and still carry around a body that hasn't met hot water in a season. But no one cares, because you look the part. And that's what counts. You close your eyes, drifting off to the scent of rosewater, clove, and just a faint, whispery suggestion of medieval armpit. You're learning. You belong. You wake up tangled in too many layers of linen, half swaddled in someone else's perfume, and wildly dehydrated from the banquet wine. Your hair is plastered to your forehead, which is ironic, considering how much effort it took to expose your forehead yesterday, and your mouth tastes like the inside of an old leather pouch. You sit up slowly, trying to remember what you did last night to smell faintly of rosemary, candle smoke, and something uncomfortably buttery. Then it hits you, the sun. It's peeking through the wooden shutters, and with it comes your next big beauty crisis. Your skin looks tan. Panic. In medieval beauty standards, nothing screams manual labor quite like sun-kissed skin. Golden tan might be all the rage in your century. But here, it says, "I shovel hay and chase pigs, and I do it often." If you want to be considered beautiful by high society, your complexion needs to scream, "I haven't touched the sun since birth." You scramble to find some kind of coverage. A hood, a veil, a small shrub. Anything will do. Historians still argue whether this pale skin preference was consistent across all classes and regions, but in much of medieval Europe, especially among the nobility, it symbolized refinement. It meant you had others to labor under the sun while you wrote mediocre poetry or learned the lute indoors. You step into the courtyard and are immediately hit with side eyes from two noble women with translucent faces. One whispers to the other gasps. You swear you hear the word sunburned. You're quickly handed a white powder compact. If you can call a walnut shell full of chalk and crushed bone compact. You're told to apply generously. Cake it on, one woman says. The goal is to resemble a holy relic. You do your best, though the powder clumps around your nose and makes you sneeze chalk dust onto a passing rooster. To really commit, you're offered a parasol, not the frilly pastel kind. This one is made from dried reeds and goat leather, and it smells like it was stored in a chimney. You hold it above your head anyway, feeling like a medieval vampire attending an afternoon tea. As you wander the village, you see the contrast everywhere. Peasant women with strong arms and ruddy cheeks haul buckets of water, their sleeves rolled up, faces bronzed and glowing. Aesthetically, they resemble Renaissance goddesses. Socially, they're invisible. Meanwhile, noble ladies perch on shaded benches, wrapped in layers of cream-colored fabric, only exposing just enough of their powdered face to let you know they're alive. One fans herself delicately while sipping from a silver cup. "I haven't left the shade since Lent," she says proudly. You nod respectfully and take 2 steps backward into deeper shadow. You try to blend in, but it's hard. Your nose is already turning pink. Your hands are darkening. A maid hands you a pair of gloves with a whisper. Cover them, or they'll think you've been digging. You slip them on quickly, even though they're a size too small and smell faintly of pickled turnip. There were other ways to preserve paleness too. Some women applied mixtures of vinegar and lead to bleach their skin. Others simply stayed indoors year-round. Still others used raw egg whites as a kind of temporary facelift/reflective coating. You attempt the egg method later that afternoon and immediately regret it when a chicken follows you for 3 blocks. You find refuge in a small herb garden behind the apothecary. There, an old woman teaches you how to make a paste from white clay, milk, and mashed mushrooms to cool the heat of the sun. You smear it on like a face mask and sit in the shade, listening to birds and wondering how you're not dead yet. A monk passes by and calls your clay-covered face an affront to God's natural light. You wave politely and keep lounging like a sun-fearing lizard. As evening approaches, you wash off the day's disguise and inspect yourself in a puddle. You've regained some of your ghostly hue. Your hands still betray you, but your forehead, blessedly exposed and powdered, carries the weight of nobility. You've learned the rules. Beauty here isn't about glow. It's about absence, of color, of blemishes, of labor. Looking like you've never touched a shovel or squinted into the sun is the goal. The more translucent you are, the higher you're standing. And if someone jokes that they can see your veins, that's a compliment. You retreat indoors as the sun sets, vowing never to walk uncovered again. Even the moon seems suspiciously bright. You think you've gotten used to the expectations by now. Clear skin, ghostly pallor, lips tinted with beetroot and possibly fear. But then someone points at your eyebrows and makes a face like they've just stepped in something unholy. "Still have those, do you?" they say, gesturing to your forehead like it's offensive architecture. You look around. It's true. Nearly every noblewoman you see is browless. Not naturally. Not subtly. Just fully plucked and proud of it. Some even have the good grace to paint a faint suggestion of where eyebrows used to be, just a little line or dot where God once drew definition. You're quickly ushered back to the same bench from the hairline plucking disaster and told to hold very, very still. You ask why? Because if you flinch, we'll take half your eyelid with it. You hold still. The tweezers are made of iron, slightly bent, and ice cold from being stored somewhere mysterious. Each hair that comes out takes a little piece of your soul with it. Think of heaven, the plucker says sweetly. You think of aspirin. Historians still argue whether the total removal of eyebrows was universal or more of a regional trend, but across large portions of Europe, particularly in upper-class circles, a smooth, uninterrupted forehead was considered peak elegance. The more untouched and unexpressive your brow, the better. Once your brows are gone, you're handed a small stick dipped in soot and vinegar. You're meant to draw new eyebrows just a bit higher, creating a permanently surprised or vaguely divine expression. You do your best. You now resemble someone who's just witnessed a miracle or an unexpected tax audit. You meet a nobleman who compliments your elevated expression. You smile. I'm trying to look like I've never had a thought. He nods. Perfect. You try blinking. It feels wrong. Too much air. Too much honesty. To complete the look, someone suggests darkening your lashes, but not too much. Anything that looks overly dramatic risks making you appear unchaste. One woman confesses she rubbed lamp soot along her lids for weeks until her confessor warned her she might attract demons. She still does it. Just quietly. You walk through the market later that day and catch a glimpse of yourself in a polished pan. The bald brow, the rising arches, the flat forehead, it's all there. You've become a blank scroll of noble beauty. You could be painted onto a church wall, and no one would question it. You pass a group of village girls who giggle behind their hands. One whispers, "She's got candle brows." You don't know what that means, but it feels like both an insult and a compliment. You choose to be flattered. Back near the manor, you meet a woman who proudly shows off her eyebrow tattoos, done with needle and ash. "Now they'll never fade," she says, eyes wide. You nod slowly, wondering how many tetanus spirits she had to bargain with to make that happen. One maid tells you she used to cut thin strips of rabbit fur and glue them above her eyes with pig lard. "Very convincing," she insists. You imagine waking up to one brow missing and stuck to your chin. You begin to miss your real eyebrows. They weren't perfect, but they never slid off your face during dinner. Still, you're learning. In this world, beauty means choosing abstraction over natural features. Eyebrows are too specific, too emotional. Better to erase them and replace them with vague intentions. At night, you lie in bed staring at the thatched ceiling, resisting the urge to scratch your burning, bald brow. A drop of candle wax lands beside you. You wonder if you could use it to seal in your eyeliner. Maybe tomorrow. You wake up already sweating, and not from the usual straw mattress panic dream. Today, it's the tightness. Across your ribs, around your waist, under your armpits. You sit up slowly, feeling like a sausage wrapped in wool and hope. Congratulations. You've been girdled. Someone decided you needed to shape up, and now your torso is being gently, firmly, and irrevocably compressed by a linen band that someone tied around you at dawn while you were still half conscious. Beauty is restraint, they said. You didn't realize they meant it literally. You shuffle to the mirror, again, a slightly polished metal plate, and take in your new silhouette. It's not the hourglass of modern fashion. It's more elongated funnel. The ideal medieval figure is long, lean, flat in the front, and rigid enough to make sitting feel like a full-body negotiation. You raise your arms. You regret raising your arms. Historians still argue whether tight lacing existed before the Renaissance corset boom, But there's no doubt that by the high Middle Ages, women were already binding themselves with linen strips, fitted kirtles, or primitive stays to achieve a proper figure. It's not about curves, it's about vertical elegance. You try walking. Every step feels like your spine has a leash. You pass a noblewoman who smiles, barely, under her wimple. You'll get used to the compression, she says. The wheezing becomes poetic. You attempt a curtsy. Something pops. You pretend it was intentional. Layering is part of the process too. Under the girdle is a shift. Over the girdle is a chemise. Over the chemise is a gown. Over the gown is a belt. Over the belt is your will to survive. One maid proudly tightens her girdle until her waist measures 4 hands. You don't ask whose hands. You just try to breathe shallowly and think about clouds. You sit at a bench and attempt to eat a small piece of bread. The pressure around your midsection reminds you that food is for peasants. Beauty, on the other hand, is for the mildly malnourished. Later, someone helps you into a sideless surcoat, a dress with huge cutouts at the waist, meant to show off your perfectly cinched figure. The look is striking, but you feel like a walking hourglass wrapped in curtains. A woman nearby wears a tighter bodice and says she fainted earlier from sheer elegance. Everyone claps. You overhear a whispered warning, "Don't lace too tight, or your liver might shift." You laugh, then realize they're not joking. You stumble into a nearby garden for air. A man sees you and offers his arm. You float, he says, like a willow branch. You're about to thank him when your foot catches a stone and you sink like an anvil. He helps you up and offers a compliment, so graceful, even when collapsing. Your self-esteem floats gently back to the surface. You remove one layer, just one, and immediately feel scandalous. A goose squawks at you. A child stares. You remember, modesty is as much a beauty standard as bone structure. Showing too much skin, or even just curves, invites judgment. You try to laugh and discover your diaphragm is out of commission. You cough instead. More poetic, anyway. Historians still debate how widespread these restrictive garments were among peasants versus nobility. But even among the working class, fitted bodices, laced waists, and strategically layered outfits shaped how women presented themselves. Function met fashion, whether they liked it or not. Back at the manor, you're offered a padded roll to wear around your hips, something to accentuate the waistline above. You now look like a chess piece. A very sweaty chess piece. As night falls, you finally unlace yourself in a dark corner of the dormitory. The first deep breath you take feels like reuniting with an old friend. You lie back on your mattress, ribs aching, lungs singing, and wonder how medieval women ever did this daily. Then you remember, they didn't always have a choice. Still, the effect? Striking. Sculpted. Ethereal. Just don't try to sneeze. You wake up feeling fresh, until you catch a glimpse of your reflection and realize your cheeks are the wrong color. Your skin is patchy, and there's something crusty on your chin. No, it's not medieval granola. It's yesterday's leftover rose-lard cream, now oxidized and quietly plotting revenge. Today, you're told, is skincare day. You're herded into a small back room with dim light and the sharp smell of vinegar. A woman with far too much energy for this early in the morning welcomes you to the beauty station and begins listing ingredients like a medieval apothecary meets Pinterest DIY, lead powder, vinegar, hog's lard, crushed pearls, and dried toadstools. You try to smile politely, but your paws are already trembling. First comes the cleanser, a gritty paste made of ground-up walnut shells, vinegar, and a splash of goat's milk. It smells like salad dressing and feels like punishment. This will remove your sins, the woman says cheerfully, as she scrubs your face with what might be a roofing tile. Then comes the brightener, a paste made of chalk and egg white, painted onto your cheeks with a brush made from horsehair. It dries quickly, pulling your face taut like a medieval facelift. You look 20, someone says. Which is impressive, considering you were 30 a minute ago. Historians still argue whether lead-based cosmetics were understood to be dangerous at the time, or whether beauty simply overruled basic survival instincts. Either way, lead was everywhere, especially among the elite. Whiter skin meant purer blood, nobler birth, and a complete disregard for heavy metal toxicity. After the chalk mask, they apply something called Venetian ceruse, a fancy lead and vinegar compound imported at great cost. It stings. You mention this. That means it's working, the beauty attendant says. You stop complaining. To give your skin a dewy finish, someone dabs pig lard onto your temples. You smell like a breakfast roast. You shine in the light like a buttered roll. You are luminous. Next comes the exfoliation step, though that word hasn't been invented yet. You're handed a strip of rough linen dipped in ashes and instructed to rub it across your arms. It smooths the skin and prepares you for marriage, someone says. You're unsure if that's a joke or a direct threat. Then, makeup. A light dusting of lead-based white powder for the face, a touch of crushed saffron on the cheeks, and something brown and oily dabbed at the temples to fake the look of delicate veins. Veins mean purity, they explain. You mutter, so do kidneys, and get a blank stare in return. Your lips are tinted with a mix of beetroot honey and something gritty that tastes suspiciously like burnt toast. For love, says the apothecary, handing you a mirror. You stare at your face. You don't recognize yourself. You are pale, glowing, and borderline radioactive. Your cheekbones could slice through gossip. Your lips look bitten. Your forehead? Still enormous. Your eyebrows? Still MIA. And yet, you look the part. You step out into the courtyard and immediately draw compliments. One woman says you have the face of a saint. Another says your complexion reminds her of a pearl in a fog. A passing monk mutters something about vanity and keeps walking. A dog follows you. Possibly for the lard, you sit on a bench beside a group of noblewomen who are reapplying their rouge with tiny cloth pads. One leans toward you and says, "Sometimes I use mouse fur dipped in red wine, much softer on the skin." You nod slowly, wondering if you're supposed to pet your face now. At midday, the sun catches your cheek and someone gasps. "You glow," they whisper. You know it's the oil, and possibly the lead. But you smile anyway. A girl nearby uses a mixture of ashes and rainwater as a face wash. Her skin is oddly clear. You make a mental note to try it, if you survive the current treatment. Back in your quarters, you carefully dab the sweat off your face with a linen cloth, terrified you'll smudge the hours of work. Your pillow is a hazard. Your own hand is a risk. But for the first time, you feel like you've cracked the code. Medieval skincare isn't about health. It's about optics. Glow at any cost. Pale at any price. Red lips, high hairline, and skin that suggests you've never seen a turnip up close. You lie back rigid, letting the pig-fat highlighter do its work in the flickering candlelight. You shine. You shimmer. Today's lesson arrives early and completely by accident. You're walking past the market square, still wearing your finest pale mask of chalk and pearl, when a woman approaches and gestures to your hair. Not admiringly. Concernedly, "Did you wash it with lard and ash?" she asks, nose wrinkling. You nod proudly. Yesterday's glamour routine included a scalp massage with goose fat, rinsed off with rainwater and chamomile. You thought it was luxurious. She shakes her head and mutters, "It's glistening." You now learn that medieval beauty standards were even more obsessed with hair than you thought. Not just any hair, virginal hair. Uncut, unstyled, untouched. Loose hair, especially long and light-colored, was a sign of youth, purity, and piety. It's the medieval equivalent of a halo. And yours? Too enthusiastic. Too shiny. Too obviously the product of effort. You're quickly pulled into a shaded corner where a trio of women are busy refining each other's locks. One is braiding her sister's hair into loops the size of wagon wheels. Another is threading ribbons through thick plaits with the precision of a carpenter. You're handed a wooden comb that looks like it's been passed down through 5 generations, and a bar of soap made from rosemary, ash, and what might be melted hooves. "It'll fix the oil," someone says cheerfully. You scrub. You rinse. You rinse again. Your scalp thanks you. Your hands may never recover. Next comes styling. Someone decides your hair should be bound. Not just tied back, fully wrapped, coiled, and contained. A sign that you're respectable, modest, and most importantly, marriageable. A linen coif is tied under your chin. Then a netted veil. Then a length of cloth is draped and pinned like a halo, turning your head into a kind of walking tower. You can barely turn your neck. Beauty, once again, has no interest in mobility. Historians still argue how common these elaborate headdresses were among average women, but in noble circles, they were everything. Your head became your social resume. Were you married? Veiled? Black veil. A virgin? Loose hair, or carefully styled braids, often exposed only during specific rituals, like weddings, or awkwardly, funerals. You attempt a slow spin to show off your new look. A small child screams. A cat flees. A monk blesses you from across the road. Victory. You're handed a small jar of hair treatment. It smells like garlic and old beeswax. It encourages lightness, they say. Light-colored hair, especially golden, reddish, or strawberry blonde, was prized. It suggested divinity, rarity, a lack of sun exposure, and possibly joy. To simulate this glow, some women soaked their hair in saffron or lemon juice, then sat in the sun. Others used horse urine. You do not volunteer for that one. One girl proudly displays her golden curls, which she insists came from bathing in milk under a full moon. You try not to question her method, or her smell. There's also the matter of length. Longer is better, of course, but only if it appears effortlessly maintained. Trimming too much? Sinful. Letting it grow too wild? Scandalous. You're expected to walk a fine line between heavenly and harlot. Someone begins weaving pearls into your braid. You panic slightly. Pearls are expensive, and your head is not insured. But apparently, this means you're ready to be seen. You're brought before a polished copper mirror. Your reflection blinks back at you through layers of netting, ribbon, linen, and just a hint of smoky soot from the room's fireplace. Your hair has become architecture. Your scalp itches. Your back is straight. Your jaw is clenched. You look perfect. A noblewoman passes by and nods. You could pass for a scribe's daughter, she says. Maybe even a minor countess. You curtsy. Your veil shifts slightly. A pearl falls into your mouth. You spit it out discreetly. Beauty here, you realize, is about containment. Your hair must be long but hidden. Healthy, but not too glossy. Tidy, but not showy. Youthful, but never unruly. There is an art to suggesting innocence while clearly having a team of women behind your braids. You walk through the courtyard, your new veil catching the late afternoon breeze. Birds chirp. Someone is sweeping hay from a cart. A man trips over your shadow and apologizes to your hair. You're proud. A little dizzy, slightly flammable. But you belong now. Even your follicles are historically accurate. You don't blink too hard in case something cracks. You wake with a peculiar sensation. Your scalp feels fine. Your breath doesn't actively offend you. But something is off. You sit up slowly, stretch, and notice the subtle, dreaded looseness in your sleeves. You've lost puff. In the medieval beauty hierarchy, this is a full-blown crisis. You glance down at your gown. Yesterday it was grand, voluminous, nobly oversized. Today it just looks deflated. And that simply won't do. You're whisked away to a seamstress who specializes in fashion enhancements, meaning padding, stuffing, lacing, and deception. The trick, she says, is not what you wear, it's what you suggest you're wearing. This is how you learn that beauty in the Middle Ages wasn't just about your body. It was about the silhouette your clothes implied you had. Broad shoulders, high bust lines, a cinched waist, and sleeves so wide they could smuggle a turkey. The seamstress adds goat hair stuffing to your upper sleeves. It feels like nesting material. Someone else pins a wooden busk into your bodice, a thin plank worn vertically to keep your posture upright and your torso as flat as a church bench. You blink. The plank creaks. Fashion here is part armor, part illusion. Historians still debate whether everyday folks went to such extremes, but among the wealthy, absolutely. Clothes didn't just flatter the body, they corrected it. Your new dress is a sideless surcoat, which leaves your sides scandalously open to reveal the tight kirtle beneath. This is known as the gates of hell style. You ask why. No one gives a clear answer. Everyone giggles. You're now wearing 4 layers, not including your new headpiece, which looks like a pastry hat made of brocade. It adds height, they say, and confidence. You can't hear through it, but you do feel at least 5 inches taller. Fashion has spoken. You practice walking in your new outfit. You no longer stride, you glide, because your shoes are pointed like arrowheads and extend several inches beyond your toes. Poulaines, someone tells you. The longer the point, the better the man. You trip over yourself 3 times and finally give in to shuffling. The shoes are stuffed with moss for comfort, and sometimes with herbs for scent. One nobleman confesses he hides licorice in his for emergency courtship. You choose not to ask what that means. As you shuffle down the hallway, your gown makes a soft, swishing sound, like a curtain brushing a floor. People turn. The illusion is working, but clothing alone isn't enough. You're offered rings for every finger, some carved with symbols meant to ward off envy. A belt with a silver clasp that hangs so low it nearly trips you. A decorative dagger, blunt but fashionable, strapped to your side. For flair, your dresser says. And maybe revenge. You take it with grace. By midday, your outfit weighs as much as a large goose and has the thermal properties of a small furnace. You can't sit properly. You can't kneel. You try to wave at someone, and your sleeve knocks over a pitcher. Charming, says a nearby nobleman. Very expressive fabric. He offers you his arm, but mostly to keep you from tipping over. Back in the manor you learn the secret to maintaining the illusion, constant maintenance. Servants repin your sleeves. A maid restarches your veil. Someone lightly spritzes your cloak with rose water as you pass. You're told to keep your shoulders relaxed, your neck extended, and your face slightly tilted, as though pondering a saint, but not too hard. You try it, and immediately cramp. You overhear a woman boasting that her dress includes 5 yards of imported velvet. Another claims hers took 6 months to stitch. You wonder what yours says about you. Newcomer trying very hard, perhaps. Still, you catch your reflection and feel, if not comfortable, at least impressive. You are 20% person, 80% drapery. But it works. Beauty in this time isn't always about the body. It's about crafting a wearable illusion that tells the right story. One of wealth, dignity, piety, or power. Even if it means never sitting comfortably again. You collapse gently onto a bench, let your skirts billow around you like a fabric sea, and try not to exhale too hard. You've earned your puff back. You've been bundled, bustled, bound, and bedazzled. But today you're told it's time to test your virtues. You're not sure what that means, but by now you've learned. If it sounds ominous, it's probably just another beauty standard. You're escorted to the garden behind the manor, where a group of noblewomen sit in a careful semicircle. Their hands are busy, embroidering, spinning, or gently plucking herbs, while their eyes flick toward you with the curiosity of cats who suspect their dinner might be late. One of them gestures for you to sit. The bench creaks under your gown. "You've got the look," one says. "Now we see if you've got the grace." This, you learn, is the next layer of medieval beauty, behavior. You may have the forehead of an angel and the waist of a squeezed wineskin, but if you laugh too loudly, walk too fast, or, heaven forbid, talk out of turn, you risk collapsing the entire illusion. You must be graceful. You must be modest. You must be silent, but not sullen. You must be seen, but never seen trying. One noble woman recites poetry. Another sings softly in Latin. You are handed a small embroidery hoop and told to make a flower. You stare at the linen as though it might burst into flame from your anxiety. Your first stitch is crooked. Your second punctures your finger. By the fifth, you've somehow sewn your cuff to your sleeve. Patience, someone says sweetly. A woman who rushes her needle invites misfortune. Historians still argue whether this behavioral beauty standard applied across all classes, but among noble women, these quiet crafts were more. They were signals of control, purity, diligence, and, frankly, how good you'd look sitting next to a future husband while saying absolutely nothing. You try to mimic the posture of the others, hands folded loosely, eyes lowered just enough to look reflective, but not depressed, mouth closed in a hint of a smile. Your nose itches. You do not scratch. You sneeze through your eyes. Success. One girl leans toward you and whispers, "A true lady never touches her face in public, or her food, or her husband, really." She giggles behind her fan. You nod solemnly, unsure whether this is a joke or a generational trauma. They test your walk next. You're told to stand and move across the garden path as though you're gliding on air, not soil. You take a step. Your shoe gets stuck in a molehill. You keep going anyway, dragging the earth behind you like a determined comet. Someone claps softly. You pass. Lunch is served shortly after. Small bits of roasted bird, preserved fruits, and fine white bread so soft you briefly consider using it as a pillow. You reach for a piece with your hand. Gasps. You freeze. A maid places a knife in your palm and nods. Even fruit must be carved. You slice an apple with the reverence of a priest. A bird lands nearby. You pretend it's a sign from God. You overhear one noblewoman discussing beauty sleep, though it's not about sleep at all. It's code for napping without drooling. She claims her mother could nap upright, veil perfectly in place, without smudging a single speck of face powder. She was a saint, she whispers. You attempt this later. You wake up with your veil askew and a small child drawing on your face with charcoal. You say thank you. They bow. Before sunset, the women gather once more and perform a slow, synchronized walk through the manor's great hall. It's not a parade. It's a performance. The gowns swish, the jewelry glints, and no one speaks. This, apparently, is the most beautiful moment of all. You join them, steps perfectly measured, expression composed. No laughter, no clumsiness, no humanity really. Just grace. Back in your room, you finally exhale. The embroidery is crooked. Your veil smells like apples. But you passed. Because medieval beauty wasn't just about what you looked like. You wake to a new kind of challenge. This one not dictated by powdered faces or embroidered hems, but by the sky itself. Rain. A slow, grey drizzle soaks the thatch roof, seeps through your borrowed slippers, and fogs every window pane in the manor. The weather may be dreary, but you're told this is excellent news. Nothing like soft light to flatter a complexion. Someone chirps as she dabs her cheeks with wine-soaked wool. No shadows, no harsh edges, just purity. You nod, chilled and unconvinced. Then another whisper. Today's a portrait day. You freeze mid-step. Portraits in the Middle Ages aren't what you're used to. No quick selfies, no flattering filters. These are laborious, hours-long sessions with stiff chairs, unblinking stares, and painters who expect you to sit still, even when your nose starts running. You're ushered into a dim chamber, lit only by one large arched window, and a candelabra that smells faintly of mutton. The painter greets you with a sigh and a squint. "I shall paint you as a vision," he says. "But don't move or I'll have to start over." He gestures for you to pose, back straight, hands delicately folded, chin tilted ever so slightly downward in noble humility. "Look serene, but like you might cry if the wind changed," he adds. You attempt this. You look like you're suppressing a sneeze during a funeral. "Perfect," he says. As he paints, you learn more about medieval portraiture. Historians still argue about how idealized these portraits were, but most agree they were aspirational. If your nose was a little too large, it might be softened. If your skin had blemishes, they'd be forgotten. Some artists even added halos for extra charm, even if sainthood was, technically, still pending. A woman nearby, already painted, whispers that she asked the artist to make her eyes larger and soul fuller. He obliged. She now looks like a surprised angel. The painter turns back to you and asks what virtues you'd like to highlight. You blink. "Silence," you say. He nods reverently and paints your mouth smaller. He adds a book in your lap, a symbol of piety, a background of lilies, symbolic of purity, and a small dog by your feet, even though there's no dog in the room. "It's fashionable," he insists, suggests loyalty. You sit for hours. You're not allowed to eat, yawn or scratch. Your entire body begins to hum with tension. You're fairly sure your foot has fallen asleep and possibly joined a monastery. He finishes as the light fades. "You'll be remembered," he says. "Forever." You peer at the canvas. Your forehead is heroic, your skin porcelain, your gown so elaborately rendered that it practically sings. You do, however, appear to have the emotional range of a medieval brick. Success. You return to your quarters and collapse, only to be told that tomorrow you're to be displayed, along with your portrait, at a feast. "It's a double unveiling," someone says brightly. You and your artistic self, two versions of perfection. That night, you dream that the painting speaks. It tells you your eyebrows are too low. Still, you wake oddly proud, because in the medieval world, beauty isn't just skin deep, it's also oil-painted, fixed in place, a myth to hang on the wall and pass down as truth, and now you're part of it. Even if your nose dripped the entire time, you barely finish swallowing your morning porridge, lukewarm and suspiciously watery, when someone bursts in with news. A traveling merchant has arrived with exotic wares. You imagine spices, silks, maybe a new kind of hat shaped like a goose. But no, it's beauty potions. And this village, you discover, is obsessed. You're led down the narrow cobbled street to the merchant's cart. It's covered in velvet cloth and crowned with hanging sachets, dried herbs, little clay bottles, and one small crate marked "extremely effective." Naturally, that's the one everyone is hovering around. The merchant himself wears a pointy cap and smiles with all the warmth of a person who definitely sold snake venom as eye drops last week. Elixirs for beauty, vitality, and irresistible charm, he announces. Safe mostly. You already regret this. He begins his demonstration by holding up a vial of thick red liquid. This, he says proudly, is essence of bull's heart, gives you rosy cheeks and the strength to dance till midnight. Someone asks if it's tested. Yes, he replies, on a cow. A woman beside you buys 2. Next comes the golden tonic, which promises skin as radiant as moonlit milk. It smells like fermented bananas and possibly regret. He claims it contains crushed pearls, honey, and the tears of widows. People line up eagerly. You ask what's in the bottle labeled "Bride's Secret." He leans in. A blend of crushed beetles, mint and powdered silver. Enhances allure, may cause humming in the ears. Historians still debate how much medieval women relied on these potions, and whether the recipes actually worked, but what's certain is that beauty remedy, unpopular love charm of the era, contained fennel, vinegar, and powdered bone. Another required you to rub a boiled frog on your eyelids. You decide not to ask what's in the small jar labeled, "For men only, beard," like a bishop. Still, the demand is real. You watch a noblewoman buy something called moon drops, which she claims will whiten her eyes and make her stare seem more mysterious. The merchant warns her not to blink for 2 hours afterward. She nods gravely. You try a sample of rose tongue elixir, meant to sweeten your voice. It tastes like minty soap. You cough once, and the merchant beams. That means it's working. Later, a girl in the manor claims her grandmother used a beauty stone made from polished lead. She looked flawless until her nose fell off. You stare. She shrugs. Worth it. Your room now contains a growing pile of mystery jars. You try one cream that tingles a little. You try another that makes your upper lip go numb. You try a third and immediately sneeze yourself into a coughing fit. Someone knocks and asks if you've found God. You say, no, just goat musk. Among the more bizarre offerings is a tiny sachet filled with dried flowers and hair clippings, meant to be worn around the neck to protect your beauty from envy. You wear it for an hour and develop a mild rash. That's just the envy reacting, someone says. You hear of a woman who once swallowed powdered emerald to make her eyes sparkle. Another drank onion water daily to preserve her figure. A third used ashes from a burned love letter as eyeshadow. Everyone has their miracle cure. By sunset, you're positively vibrating with potions, smelling faintly of herbs, soap, vinegar, and something best left unidentified. You sit very still, afraid to sweat. A nobleman approaches and compliments your ethereal shimmer. You nod, trying not to move your face in case anything slides off. You now understand. These people are dedicated. Beauty isn't just a social advantage, it's a quest, a gamble, a faith. If something might give you a faint glow or more graceful knees, you try it. Consequences are for tomorrow. You lie in bed surrounded by softly glowing vials. Your hair smells like thyme and your teeth are tingling. The moonlight reflects off your cheeks, possibly from the silver. Either way, you're radiant. It's your final day in the manor, and someone insists you commemorate it properly, with a visit to the sculptor. You've grown internally. You've already been painted, perfumed, poked, veiled, stitched, stuffed, and sparkled. Surely you've fulfilled every medieval beauty rite known to mankind. But no, your legacy must be immortalized, says the steward, ushering you into a chilly stone chapel filled with half-finished busts. A noblewoman is never truly beautiful unless she looks good in marble. That's a high bar. You're told to sit perfectly still while the sculptor studies your face. He squints, pokes your cheek with the handle of a chisel, then hums thoughtfully. Don't move. I'm capturing your essence. You aren't entirely sure where your essence resides, but you do your best. As he works, you're bombarded with further advice on how to behave like a lady carved from stone, graceful, distant, and above it all. Like a swan, someone says. But, you know, stone. You suppress a sigh. While he chips away, you reflect on how beauty has followed you like a shadow since you arrived. Not beauty as we know it today, of course, but a relentless medieval dance of appearances and perceptions. Here, beauty isn't just admired, it's moralized. A clear complexion suggests purity. Delicate features imply noble blood. Even the right smell hints at virtue. Meanwhile, anything less, blemishes, asymmetry, unwashed hair, invites suspicion. Sin. Maybe even sorcery. You recall that merchant's warning about women with too much rouge being mistaken for witches. Too much allure, he'd said, can raise questions. Historians still debate how deep this connection between beauty and morality went, but the fact remains, in this world, how you looked often stood in for who you were. The sculptor finishes your nose. You sneeze and nearly knock over a statue of St. Mildred. No one blinks. Symmetry, he mumbles, is God's blueprint. You aren't sure how symmetrical your ears are. You hope no one checks. Later, you're shown into the main hall for the final reveal. Your sculpture is still rough, but there you are, smooth-browed, softly smiling, blank-eyed and serene. You look nothing like yourself, which means it's a great success. You overhear someone say, "She could have been a duchess." Another nods, or at least married to one. You're flattered, and mildly concerned. But the real surprise comes after the feast. You're taken into a quiet alcove, handed a glass of warm mead, and told to rest. The steward smiles and says, "You've done well. You played the part. You've been beautiful." You blink at him. "But I was just pretending," you say. He shrugs. "So was everyone else." The fire crackles softly nearby. You loosen your veil. Untie the girdle. Rub the rouge from your cheeks. Beneath it all, you're flushed and tired and human again. And oddly enough, still lovely. Maybe not in the pearl-crushed, forehead-bared, saintly eyes sort of way, but in the way that comes from having survived a week of mouse fur brushes, lace-stitched sleeves, powdered skin, goat-scented serums, and dresses that doubled as tents. You lie back on the straw mattress one final time, warm from the fire, heavy from the wine. You think of every beauty standard you tried to embody, some strange, some silly, some surprisingly familiar. And as the candle flickers and your body slowly unwinds, you realize you've been part of a centuries-old performance. One that still echoes today, just with different tools. Still measuring, still reshaping, still chasing. But for now, just rest. Your hair can stay tangled. Your dress can wrinkle. Your cheeks can fade. You're beautiful enough. The room is still now, except for the gentle crackle of the fire. You feel the softness of linen against your skin, the faint weight of your hair loose across your shoulder, and the familiar rhythm of breath rising and falling like waves against a peaceful shore. There are no more potions to try. No more mirrors to face. No more silk to adjust or posture to maintain. All the ideals, the flushed cheeks, the high hairlines, the pearl-dusted lips, drift away like smoke curling into the beams above you. You imagine the sculptor's marble figure, half-finished and already forgotten, quietly resting in some cold chapel. It doesn't need to be perfect. Neither do you. The rain has stopped outside. The air smells faintly of wet stone and rosemary. Somewhere in the distance, a candle gutters, and the quiet settles deeper. There's nothing more you need to prove. Not to the merchant selling powdered mystery, not to the noblewoman judging your curtsy, not to the painter who gave you the wrong nose, and certainly not to history itself. Because tonight, in this moment, in this stillness, you are more than beautiful. You are calm. You are safe. You are enough. So let your limbs sink into the mattress. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let every silly beauty myth fade into the soft darkness that wraps around you like a velvet cloak. The story's over. The lights are low, and sleep is already on its way.